Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Now Sephora's in-house brand, which is just called the Sephora collection, they have 3 brand new giant eyeshadow palettes out, and I picked up 2 of them. Now I'm not sure if I'd be able to review both the palettes in just one video, but just let's get started with one. I picked up the warm neutrals and then the editorial. Now they also have like the cool neutrals, which I was not very interested in. So let's begin with the bright editorial ones. This is the colorful palette. This is the box that it comes in. This is the Sephora Pro, and then it says Pro Pigment Palette Editorial. You get, as I said, this is a giant palette. There are 28 shades in total. Let me just show you the size of the palette. This is how big it is. Packaging kind of, not that I've used Morphe palettes, but it kind of looks like it, but doesn't matter. And this retails for $65. I'm not sure if we are at that stage of inflation yet, but you do get a lot of eyeshadows in here, and you do have like the list of ingredients. Now this box has like a blue lining to it, and then this is like the preview of what shades you get inside the palette, and this is made in the US. It says Pro Pigment, but I don't see anywhere that any of these eyeshadows are not safe for the eye, so I'm assuming all of these eyeshadows, these bright colors, let me quickly show you the colors that you get. These colors, all of them, I'm assuming they are like safe for the eyes, because if they aren't, they have to disclose it. So yeah, this retails for $65, and each pan, 28 pans you get, each pan you get 0.04 ounce of product, which is a really good amount, because just for reference, max single eyeshadow pan, like the full size eyeshadow pan, you get 0.05 ounce of product, and so do you get in Urban Decay's full size eyeshadow pans as well. So this is just 0.01 ounce less. So max is 0.05 and this is 0.04 ounce of product. So yeah, and this is made in the US. So let's get into the swatches. Let's quickly do it so that we can squeeze in the warm neutrals as well. And this does come with a mirror in it. And this is pretty plain. It just says Sephora, and at the back it just says, the editorial and how much product you get. It does come with a beautiful mirror. Now, and I'm holding the palette upside down. So this is the top row. I know it looks like it has completely all of them white, but you do get 2, like one straight up silver shade, and then one like a gunmetal silver shade. Then you have 4 opalescent shades, and then opalescent meaning it looks white, but when it touches the skin, it gives you a distinct pigment, like a beautiful strong pigment. And then you do have like one white eyeshadow, plain white, and then the rest, as you can see, are all colorful shades. So let's get swatching. Now these eyeshadows do not have the names printed on the palette, inside right next to the colors, but they did come with like a plastic sheet with the names printed, but the plastic sheet wasn't attached to the palette. It was just a loose sheet just laid on top. So I just missed it. I think everyone will. So yeah, I don't have the names or anything. Let's get swatching. This is the first eyeshadow, which is a matte eyeshadow, straight up white. It's not like a cream or off-white, it's just white, stark white it looks. So if I use this, to blend use it in my crease, blend it anywhere, it just looks stark white. So I would just need to use this as like, like a highlighter, just highlight it. So this is the first opalescent shade, holographic shade. You see it just so yellow gold. So this is just, it does not have any chunky glitter. None of the 4, now there are 4 shades, none of the four shades have any chunky glitter. They are very, very finely milled. These remind me so much of Kat Von D's Alchemist Palette, because there are 4 shades in the Kat Von D's Alchemist Palette, and you have 4 shades here as well. And I think the shade range is very, very similar to this, except for one. This is a green shade from the palette, and then this is the blue shade. I think Kat Von D's palette, these 3 are the same. Pink, you have a pink, green, and blue, but in place of the gold, I think you have a bluish purple. Now you have like a blue, and then you have like a purple blue in Kat Von D's palette, but here instead of the purple blue, you have like a yellow. Now these are so similar to the Kat Von D's holographic palette, guys, but I feel the Kat Von D's holographic palette has like a more softer, and not, these are little tiny bit firmly pressed, and the Kat Von D's ones are softer, and that I feel is like a slight downside, because they definitely need, on if you were to use the Kat Von D's Alchemist palette as eyeshadows, you definitely need to use a base, because they are so soft that they kind of crumble on the eyes. But since these are more firmly pressed, I feel you can just use it without a base, and they give a very beautiful holographic look without any kind of a base at all. I do use like a eyeshadow primer, but I like these better. And also this, having this gold shade is more practical than just having like a bluish purple. So yeah, I like these over the these 4 shades in the palette. But again, this retails for $65, so just for these 4 shades I wouldn't recommend you buy this palette just for these shades, because the Alchemist palette is like you know, like $32. So anyways, before I proceed further, I want to talk about like finishes. I completely forgot to talk about finishes. Now there's like straight up matte, and then there are like soft shimmers, you know, satin kind of a shades. Then there's like a few metallic eyeshadows, and then there are 2 kinds of very high intense eyeshadows. Now there are the pressed pigment variety, meaning if you pick it up with a dry brush, they do not, like, you wouldn't have any pigment, so you definitely need to wet your brush for that foiled effect. The one I have on my eyelid today is one such shade. It's like pressed pigment. And then there's a next level kind of a high you know, chunky glitter kind of a eyeshadow, which is like flaky, flaky to the point that it's actually you know, you whether you use it as eyeshadow, eyeshadow, what am I saying? Whether you use it with a wet brush or a dry brush, it remains flaky. So I'm just going to call those you know, flaky eyeshadows flaky, and then the eyeshadows which work with a wet brush, eyeshadow brush, as like you know, like pressed pigment kind of a name, just for you guys to know the difference. The shadow next, which I'm going to swatch, is that flaky eyeshadow. Now the problem that I have with this finish is that, do you see how it does not coat my skin evenly? Now this is with a finger swatch, no doubt, but when you use it a wet brush or a dry brush, this is the exact result you get. And I feel that it doesn't even look good as like a top coat, guys. I don't know. When I use this as a top coat kind of eyeshadow look, it still looks flaky and makes the entire eye look kind of incomplete, and I feel personally it kind of ruins the eye look when I use this as a top coat. So my biggest problem is it doesn't like coat my skin evenly. It's so uneven and it flakes off so badly. So this flaky shade is actually different from that pressed pigment, because pressed pigment works with wet eyeshadows brush and fingers, and with fingertips you actually can get a very foiled look. But these, no matter, it doesn't work with any kind of medium, with the fingers or wet or dry eyeshadow brush. So I just don't like. There's one more shade in this palette with the same kind of flaky finish. Now the next shade that I'm swatching is more of that pressed pigment. So with a dry brush you would have a problem, but with fingertips or with the wet brush they go on beautifully. So that's like more of like a gunmetal silver kind of a shade. The second row is like a completely colorful all matte row, and this is like a straight up orange. Now this complete row is beautifully pigmented. There's no need to build up. They are amazing, guys. Then secondly you have this coral shade, which is also very beautifully pigmented. And then the third is like it's not a straight up red, as you can see. It's like a pinkish red. I think that's kind of a unique shade, because you see a lot of like cool toned red and like orange reds, but this pink red I think is very unique. And then you have like a hot pink, which is also beautifully pigmented. This entire row is actually very pigmented. And then you have like a magenta shade. And then you have like a purple magenta shade, pinkish purple. Now these two, I really expected them to look so similar on the skin, but do you see there is like a distinct difference? Even when you use an eyeshadow brush and blend it, they do look different. So yeah, and finally, do have like, this is not entirely a matte shade. This is like that satin shade, very soft shimmer. So to the point that you can definitely use this eyeshadow in the crease as a substitute for a matte shade. So this is the first row from here to here, and then this is the second row. The second row, first row, both the rows are beautifully pigmented. You do not need to build up at all. And then the third row is this pressed pigment, meaning if you use a dry brush, you will not be able to pick up any product. You definitely need to use your fingertip or a wet brush. And this is a very, very, very pale green. It looks very kind of gold, very pale gold, but it's actually like a green shade. And then next is like a lemon green, which is a matte shade. This shade is actually sheer. You need to build up definitely this shade, but you do not need to like sit for hours to build this shade up. Just 2 to 3 layers should do. It would look as true to as you see in the pan here. So yeah, and then next again you have like a matte shade, just like a mint green. This shade is very pigmented. I didn't have any problem. You do not need to build this up at all. This is very, very pigmented. Then the next shade is like soft shimmer, like a satin shade, which is like a forest grass green, I would say, which is also very, very pigmented. No need to build up at all. So you can use this as like a matte shade also, very, very soft shimmer. And then next you have like a deep blue teal shade, beautiful shade. This is a matte. There's no need to build up at all. It's very pigmented. And then you have like a cobalt blue shade, beautiful, so drop dead gorgeous, guys. These two are as well not very, very pigmented. No need to build up. Beautiful. And then this final shade is actually the finish of this is very similar to this grass green. And then this purple, it's a very soft shimmers, which can also be used as like liners underneath, or as just use them as you would use a matte eyeshadow. So yeah, that is very pigmented as well. Final row has this pressed pigment kind of eyeshadow. This looks kind of this is a very pale rose shade. Let me show you. Pale rose shade, but it just looks like a champagne shade on my skin. And this is like a pressed pigment. You definitely need to wet your brush or use your fingers, but when you use your fingertips or wet your brush, they do work well, unlike those flaky shades. And then next is like a yellow gold. This is a shade I have on my eyelids. This is a pressed pigment kind of a shade, not the flaky kind. And then now we have a duochrome here. Let me quickly properly swatch it. Duochrome, which if you're familiar with MAC's green gold pigment, which has green to gold shift, this is that kind of a shade, and this is actually pretty pigmented. You do not need to build this up at all. And this is actually the only metallic shade I think in this palette. You have soft shimmers, and then you have pressed pigment and those very badly performing flaky shades, but this is like just a metallic shade. And then let me just quickly show you that second flaky shade. This is it. It's beautiful reddish pinkish orange shade. The shade is stunning, but just closely see how it badly swatches. This just skips and it does not coat my skin properly, guys. Do you see how, oops, let me move back. It's just not good at all. It just flakes and it just disappears. I feel top coats kind of thing, these have to amp up the look, but I feel these two shades, this shade and this, where is it, this shade, just kind of ruins the look for me, and I feel like I would have to start over. These two shades are not good. And then you have like a beautiful orange shade, coppery orange shade, which is this is actually the black eyeshadow from this very same palette that I swatched, but this is just a stain that it left behind. This is actually again like a metallic shade. It's not very soft, I wouldn't say, but same time it's not very very metallic either. It's very, very pigmented. And then this is such a beautiful shade, guys. This is such a beautiful olive tone shade, green, olive green shade. Usually olive greens look so kind of dirty on me. That green tint does not come through at all. It just turns like a dirty brown. But this shade looks very true to color and truly looks like an olive green on my skin tone. And this again is, I would say this is like a metallic finish, not exactly a satin finish. Let me properly swatch it once again. And then finally, this black is crazy pigmented. Now, when I was trying this palette out, I just deposited this black shade here down below, and I just moved the brush, and the pigment just beautifully moved along with the brush from here to here. Just beautifully swatches and also blends well. So that is my review of this palette. All in all, I love the palette. Let me quickly show you the swatches. Do you see how different each eyeshadow is? There is no repetition, no like same shades over and over again. I just love these opalescent shades that they threw in, which is really, really amazing quality, guys. And obviously, since they are so finely milled, they can be used as highlighters as well. Most definitely. They are quite intense. And I really like this over the Kat Von D's Alchemist palette, just because they do not crumble and they're not as soft as the Kat Von D's Alchemist palette, and these do not need a base to make it pop. But the Kat Von D definitely needs a base, because they're so soft that when I try to pack it on the eyelids, they kind of crumble. So, but these are amazing. Just you don't need a base, they just pop on, especially in dark skin. They just they're so bright and beautiful. And as for the matte shades, they are amazing. They're crazy pigmented. There's not, except for this lime green needs definitely building up, but the rest of the matte shades are beautifully pigmented. I feel they do not fade away. I've been having this eye look for very like 7-8 hours now, and they haven't faded. Now let me just break down the eye look. Now in the transition shade, I have this purple shade, and then I have this blue shade, this blue shade, and then the teal shade mixed together in the actual crease. And then on the eyelid, I have this pressed pigment gold shade. I try to incorporate these flaky shades, but they just keep putting me in a bad mood every time I use them. I feel it ruins the look. This flaky finish is a total flop for me. It just brings the palette down, honestly. I think they shouldn't have just added it, or even if they added it, they should have just properly formulated it. It just looks pretty in the pan, but just totally unusable, at least for me. I just don't like them. So the two shades are total flops for me. I don't know how to use them. I tried using it with a dry brush, with my fingertips, with a base underneath, and then with a wet brush. It just did not work. No matter how you do it, the actual problem is the formulation, I feel, is fundamentally wrong with these flaky shades, because it doesn't adhere. It doesn't evenly coat the skin no matter what you do. It's just too dry, I feel. It just looks pretty in the pan because they are flaky and large, and I think that's why they kind of flake off on the actual skin. So the satin finishes, you have one this grass green, and then where's the grass green? Oh yeah, the grass green, and then this blue, and then this shade, this orange shade. They're all beautiful pigmented. All in all, this is a stellar palette, guys. $65 is a bit expensive, but if you are someone who loves colorful eyeshadows, I think this I'd say save up the money if you don't have the funds at your disposal right now to buy this palette. And if you love colors, I'd say save up and buy this palette, because this is limited edition and the quality is so good. It's not just you know, single tone kind of a palette. You have opalescent shades, you have shimmery shades, you have beautiful matte shades, you have like a pressed pigment shade, and these, of course, you do have these bad shades, these flaky shades, but if you omit those two, the palette is actually impeccable. And the other alternatives that you have, like truly good quality colorful mattes or colorful matte eyeshadows that you have in the market, are Sugar Pills, I would say, have Visearts and Cosettes. Now all of these eyeshadows are very crazy expensive, guys. Sugar Pills, I think singles retail for $10. I think the Cosettes single eyeshadows, they retail for $11. And then and Sugar Pills and Cosettes come in pans. They do not come in actual packaging. Pan is not a packaging. You will have to spend money on an eyeshadow palette separately, like a magnetic palette, which would again cost you like $15 to $20. So I feel all of these would be more expensive. So I'd say if you love colorful eyeshadow palettes, just save up and buy this palette. So yeah, that's my review on this palette. I would be you know, doing another video for the warm neutrals, so stick for that. And thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And so yeah, I highly recommend this eyeshadow palette. It's a go for me if you love colors. I would say this is like the most cost-effective way to buy a colorful eyeshadows all together in one palette, and it does come with a packaging which is very sturdy, and it does have a mirror. So yeah, and it's also very accessible. So if you're really interested, please go ahead and buy this and try it and see if you really like it. So yeah, that's my review. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked watching it, and thank you so much, guys, for watching it as well, and please subscribe. Bye.